And as Russian invasion into Ukraine completes 2 months, news coming in that UN Chief Antonio Guterres is going to travel to Russia and Ukraine next week in order to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. In fact, this is coming in at a time when there's 2 months being completed of the Russian invasion. I'm joined by my colleague Srinjoy Chowdhury. Srinjoy, so Antonio Guterres in a way trying to play the mediator here.
Yes, and it's very important to end the war. That's really the bottom line, because as even the Indian Prime Minister has said, the war has to end. There has to be diplomatic dialogue. And let's not forget that thousands of people have died, thousands, and this includes civilians, even women and children. And the fact that millions have been forced to move out of the war zone. Millions of Ukrainians are in Poland or in Hungary or Slovakia or Romania, some even in Russia. So it's a very difficult situation. And the earlier the war ends, the better it is. So this is one attempt by Antonio Guterres to at least try and ensure that the war comes to an end. There has to be a solution. And where he is in the UN, has that responsibility, has the authority. He has the right to go and speak with the presidents of both countries, whether it is Russia, whether it's the Ukraine, and try and find a solution. If this shuttle diplomacy actually works, it will be a great achievement, because it will end a very destructive war, which has the potential of going on and lasting much longer. And if it does last longer, it will mean more casualties, more suffering, more destruction, and it will have, least of all perhaps, but still very important, terrible economic effects in the rest of the world.
Right, Srinjoy, before we let you go, another question, because Russia has recently changed its strategy in terms of the war, focusing mostly in the eastern parts of Ukraine, closer to the border. Do you think that is a bit of a step back on the part of Russia, or is it just, from an outsider's point of view, it looks like because they are not targeting areas close to Kiev, but that is just probably, Russia trying to blindside the world, whereas the intensity of the war is still as much as it was earlier?
Well, there are two ways of looking at it. First of all, tactically, this might be a good decision. When I say tactically, I mean militarily. It might be a good decision, because instead of looking at targeting Kiev, targeting Kharkiv, targeting Mariupol and Odessa, targeting the Donbass, you focus on one area. And if you're focusing on one area, you're focusing very, very cogently with all your forces, with all your resources, with all your artillery, with all your rocketry, with your Air Force resources, all of it in one area. Now, if you can do that, then very clearly you are at an advantage. Now, that is what the Russians are trying to do. We also know that spring has just come to the Ukraine. So when spring comes, or when there is autumn in the Ukraine, the snows melt. When the snows melt, that area is full of, it gets very muddy. So how the Russians will do what they want to do, we'll have to see, because the terrain would be a little against them. But very importantly, if they are concentrating their resources, their tanks, their guns, their rockets, their Air Force, all of it together, their best soldiers, their paratroopers, their special forces, their spetsnaz, all of it together, then it's quite a bigger challenge.
Right, Srinjoy Chowdhury there, thank you so much for bringing us that perspective into the latest development coming in as far as the Russian invasion into Ukraine is concerned.